AfriKili family, Global Pack Nation. In today's show, we'll discuss two stories. First, Jasmin Crockett, the fiery U.S. Congresswoman from Texas, does not bite her tongue. She joined her colleagues from the Black Caucus in the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives, and she accuses Donald Trump of attacking the future of Black people during the first 100 days of his administration. According to Jasmin Crockett, the Trump administration is hell-bent on dismantling the very system that was designed to protect. Then we will move on to Captain Ibrahim Traore. Well, he continues to galvanize support across the global PAC, the global Pan-African communities. People from all walks of life across the big Pan-African diaspora are continuing to march and support and show their excitement towards Captain Traore. Well, as they say, to whom much is given, much is expected. So what are we to make of this newfound popularity that seems to be going towards Captain Ibrahim Traore? And how can we make sure that he continues working on the right path? And how can we hold him accountable to ensure that he continues succeeding for the well-being of his people in Burkina Faso, but also the global PAC in general? So there you have it. That is what we'll talk about today. Let's fasten our seatbelts. Let's dive in and let's get to work. AfriKili family and Global Pack Nation, always a pleasure for me to be here with you for this Global Pack show within our AfriKili concept. This is Tony Mfumusimba Kwambamba. Thank you very much for your support. All of you who have been with us ever since we started this new Global Pack live concept back in January. So thank you very much for your support, for your comments, those of you that are subscribing. Much appreciated. And those of you who have not done that yet, let me ask you to please just take a moment. If you would click on the subscribe button, it only takes a second for you to do that, but it helps me tremendously. It helps this platform grow. It allows us to meet the goals that we've set for ourselves in 2025. But more importantly, it allows you to become part of this community so that as we grow together, you're part of the dialogue. And so you participate. And importantly also, as we release new shows, you will make sure not to be left out and you'll be notified by subscribing. So thank you very much for taking the time to do that. Much appreciated. Thank you ahead of time. All right, so today, two very interesting and exciting topics, in my opinion. We will start with Jasmin Crockett. Jasmin Felicia Crockett. The fiery man. I love this representative. In the event that you might not know who she is, let me just put a quick picture. So this is Rep here, Jasmin Crockett. She is a firecracker who has been gaining prominence pretty rapidly, I would say, on the younger side of elected representative. So she is currently the representative of the U.S. district, the 30th district out of Texas. Well, just very rapid information on her background. I'm assuming that many of you know who she is, but maybe you're from different parts in the world. You've never heard of her. So just a quick background information on her before we go into the scathing attack that she made towards the Trump administration. She's 44 years old, born in Missouri. She initially went for undergraduate at Rhodes College in Memphis, Tennessee, and then ended up going to law school and obtained her law degree. In the U.S., we call that the JD, so that's the Juris Doctorate at the University of Houston, which is one of my alma maters. So University of Houston Cougars. We have these things that say, whose house is it? Or here, whose house is it? Coug's house. That's our sign at U of H. So yeah, very proud of that. Really, really like her. But anyway, so she goes and obtains her her law degree, and after graduating from law school, she becomes a public defender. All right, and also she takes on some cases, pro bono cases. Pro bono means you essentially do it for free. All right, so she takes a lot of pro bono cases to support a Black Lives Matter activist. So yeah, so that has been her thing, and so she started her law firm, very entrepreneurial. Did not necessarily go the traditional, a big law firm route, but then after that, her political career, I think she's really been gaining a lot of popularity fairly quickly, like over the last 4 years or so. Because the way it happens, first of all, you had Eric Johnson, I believe, the mayor of Dallas, who was in the state legislature. So he was in the Texas House of Representatives, and he was about to run to become the next mayor of Dallas. And so as such, he had to let go of his post. And so he did that. And so there was a special election and so on. And eventually, Jasmin Crockett ends up assuming the post that was initially the Dallas mayor's post. So that's within the Texas legislature, because as you know, in the U.S., you have legislatures, so political bodies within the state, but then you also have the federal, which is at the U.S. level. So she begins her career essentially 2021. Well, then later that year, there is another post that ends up being vacant because she assumes office in January 2021, and I believe it was in November of 2021. So there is a post that's left vacant, and she ends up because the incumbent decided that she would not run for re-election the following year in 2022, and so Jasmin Crockett decided to announce herself as a candidate for that post. I was trying to find the name. So the incumbent was U.S. Representative Miss Eddie Bernice Johnson, who unfortunately ended up dying in 2023. So she left us 2 years ago. So the late Eddie Bernice Johnson. So yeah, so Miss Representative, U.S. Representative Bernice Johnson says that she would not run for re-election the following year in 2022. So now we're in November 2021. Remember, this is just a few months after Jasmin Crockett became a state representative, right, for Texas, which was in January 2021. So November, the announcement is made, and Jasmin Crockett announces her candidacy for that post. And so elections go on, and eventually the following year, she runs for election, and she is elected. And now she goes from the state legislature to the federal legislature, to the House of Representatives. And so she becomes a U.S. Congresswoman in 2022. In 2022, she was elected, but she assumes office in January 2023, representing the Texas 30th District. So the 30th District is in Dallas and some part of South Dallas and so on. So yeah, so officially since January 2023, Jasmin Crockett has been a representative for the Texas 30th District. And that's when the fireworks started happening. I mean, this lady is a firecracker. If you have not followed her, I will talk about some of the statements, for example, she made this past Monday, which is the inspiration of me coming and talking about her. Because, this past Monday, she got on the floor of the House, joining her colleagues from the Black Caucus. The Black Caucus is essentially a group, an institution of Black elected congressmen and women, which was created, I believe, in 1971, and which was created as a mechanism to advocate for policies for the benefit of Black and marginalized communities. It's a body that likes to be bipartisan, even though mostly it is composed of Democratic congressmen and women. So she joined her colleagues, and that's when she made her attacks towards the Trump administration. But before I even mention those statements, I said she's a firecracker. Look, there was something that was very, very maybe hilarious, but some people say petty. There was this fight in Congress. There was a hearing, right, in the oversight committee. And on one end, you had MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who she is just as much a firecracker on the Donald Trump sphere in the MAGA sphere, MAGA, MAGA, which is Make America Great Again. So that's the Donald Trump orbit. So Marjorie Taylor Greene, another one who came in Congress out of Georgia without previous political experience, another one who does not hold punches, who does not bite her tongue. And so there was that crazy, crazy exchange between the two. Whereas on one end, you have Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is accusing, and that was back in earlier in May of last year, I believe. So she accuses. It was exactly on May 16, 2024. That's the date I was trying to locate. So on May 16, 2024, MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene, during the hearing, she addresses Jasmin Crockett by telling her, quote, "I think your fake eyelashes are messing up what you're reading." Again, so I think your fake eyelashes are messing up what you're reading. So she that was a direct ad hominem attack. So an attack on Jasmin Crockett's supposed her eyelashes, right, being fake, and so she couldn't read. Aha! As to be expected, Jasmin Crockett would not take such an attack unaddressed. And to make matters worse, the James Comer, who was the Oversight Committee's chairman, said that the comments by Marjorie Taylor Greene did not violate the House protocol, the House conduct protocol. So when he said that, okay, Jasmin Crockett said, all right. And that's when there was all kind of memes that was circulating on the internet last year about MTG, if you recall. And so she said, okay, so if someone on this committee then start talking about somebody's bleach blonde, bad built, butch body, that would not be engaging in personalities, correct? So she, in response to, remember, the Oversight Committee chairman who said that MTG did not violate personal attacks. So Crockett asked him, all right, so if I was to talk about somebody's bleach blonde, so referring to the hair, somebody's bad built, so somebody who's built very badly, somebody's butch body, so that would not be attacking somebody personally, right? Now, as she engaged, it was funny how she talked about those three things so quickly. It went something like bleach blonde, butch body, bad built. So Comer, who probably has never heard that, responded by saying, what now? Which was hilarious. I'm not doing it a good service by saying it. You should just look it up online. It was hilarious. And that just ended up circulating, and that was just fireworks exploding back then. That's a bit funny. Obviously, we're not here to talk about people's looks and so on, but just to kind of tell you the kind of personality she can be. She will not hold punches. If you attack her, she will attack back, which is why many people on the Democratic side really have high hopes for her so that she can raise up the leadership ranks, because they believe that, especially the new waves, the younger generation, they believe that they need that sort of energy in the Democratic Party that seems to be a bit on the older side, with the leadership that's maybe a bit too conservative sometimes, even though the House of Representatives typically is supposed to be more fiery compared to the Senate, which might be a bit more conciliatory, right? So that's Jasmin Crockett. So somebody, again, came up the ranks quickly. Her political career has been going has been skyrocketing. She's all over the television. She all over social media. She's gaining a lot of appearance. A bit like Ibrahim Traore. She's somebody who's becoming increasingly popular. All right, now, in terms of why I'm even bringing this up. So as I said, she gets on the floor, on the House Representative floor this past Monday on the 5th. And you can see, so this was taken, if you go on her Twitter page, so you'll see here, you can view the video out of her page, the video of her making those statements, right? And that's, again, here's a screenshot just taken from her Twitter page. You can go in, you click on it, and you will see the whole 5-minute address. I will not obviously play the whole 5 minutes, but I'll just take some quotes based on what she said, because essentially, to summarize her intervention, she centered it around attacking the Donald Trump administration, saying that in the first 100 days, they have attacked the future of Black communities, Black freedom. She centered it around their attack towards education by promoting things like what they call patriotic education. She went against that, but also some policies against housing, which she's saying all that was taken straight out of the Project 2025 agenda. Project 2025, if you remember during the campaign, it kept coming up all the time, right? Because this was this document that was put together through the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is a think tank, a right-wing think tank, a conservative think tank. And so that Project 2025 was essentially a 900-page document that was advocating for a consolidation of power at the executive level. So diminishing power in other branches of government and really increasing the concentrating powers at the executive branch, at the presidential branch. And also he talked about how it wanted to eliminate merit-based political appointments or government workers appointment, but only appoint people that would be loyal to the president, loyal to Donald Trump. So it was a very controversial document. Donald Trump kept saying he had nothing to do with it, but lo and behold, ever since he came into power, many of the tactics from Project 2025 are being implemented in the Donald Trump presidency administration. So Jasmin Crockett accused him during that statement of taking policies out of that. So I'm going to read you a few quotes from her speech that day. So a few quotes that I put down here. So for example, here's what she said. She said, within the first 100 days of the Trump administration, oops, my computer is playing tricks on me. Okay, within the first 100 days of the Trump administration, we have unfortunately had to endure a lot of pain. And in just 100 days, we have witnessed an administration hell-bent on dismantling the very system designed to protect the most vulnerable amongst us. Okay? And so she continued by saying, and for Black Americans, those of us that have always carried the weight of a broken system and bad policies, that the danger is real, it is tangible, and it is urgent. So again, this was in response to, that was her assessment on the first 100 days of the Trump administration. So that's a quote out of her statement. And so here's some additional quotes from what she said. Here she said, we want the president to look into what the Declaration of Independence was about. We may want him to understand that the foundational document as it relates to self-determination of those who had recently gained their independence from Great Britain. Okay. And so she says, yeah, so according to the Declaration of Independence, we are entitled to the right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So she's talking about the black community here. And so finally, talking about education and housing, she is saying, so yeah, here she's purposely targeting the Department of Education. Because remember, I did a show about this 2 weeks ago when the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, had decided to sue the Trump administration because the Department of Education was wanting to withhold funding towards schools that were serving underserved and underprivileged children, minority children, if those schools would not eliminate some of the diversity programs. So here, talking about that, here's what she is saying. So she reminded the Trump, action drawn out of 2025. So she said, so instead, they are attempting to whitewash history and have begun to promote so-called patriotic education, which excludes the honest teaching of slavery, Jim Crow, and systemic racism. And with regards to what the Trump administration is calling common sense discipline, because there is a practice that they want to reinstate in schools, she obviously stood up against that also. And then she ended up going, and so I just made quick summaries here, and she ended up going and attacking the housing department, which saying that their action towards the HUD is cutting fair housing rules that were initially created to fight discrimination. So just to give you some ideas of what her statements were. So again, you can go on her Twitter page, which I had put on, which is right here on the screen, and you can follow that statement, which lasted about 5 minutes. Okay, so Jasmin Crockett, so she is definitely somebody who is standing up for the equality, standing up for equal rights for Black people, injustice. She's being painted on the right side of the aisle as somebody who's being very extremist, somebody who's racist against white people. So she is not liked at all by the extreme right and the conservative side of the political aisle. But she's somebody who, as I said, does not bite her tongue. Maybe that's the reason why she seems not to be liked. She doesn't care about being just diplomatic and politically correct. She just lays it down as it is. But as a former lawyer, the thing is, you can never accuse her of just being not having substance behind her words. Now, there was another controversy here in Texas a while back where, for example, we have the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, who is on a wheelchair, right? So as he goes around on a wheelchair because of an accident that happened many years ago. I think there was a tree that might have fallen on him. And so as she was talking about him, she talked about Mr. Hot Wheels. And so, the right wing started saying, how could she? She's attacking his handicap and so on. She came back and obviously she rebutted that, saying, no, it had nothing to do with him being on a wheelchair, but she was talking about different policies with regards to, transportation and so on. Anyway, so that's Jasmin Crockett. We'll continue following her. It's somebody, as I said before, I really appreciate a lot for her candidness, right? She's somebody who does not hold punches at all. All right, very quickly, we're going to move on to our second story here, which is Captain Ibrahim Traore. As a reminder of who Traore is, here is Captain Ibrahim Traore, the revolutionary, the charismatic young leader, 37 years old, who is leading the country of Burkina Faso. I did a whole show about it yesterday and the day before, which seems to, you guys seem to really appreciate a lot. I'm seeing that, the videos seem to be hitting pretty well. So we have established how he is galvanizing the entire global PAC, the entire global Pan-African community, because you have people going anywhere from the Caribbean, African Americans, Africans of different countries other than Burkina Faso. So there is this wave, this sense of unity that is being expressed by Black people across the world to support Captain Ibrahim Traore. And so the one thing I want to talk about today is, he is gaining a lot of popularity a lot of power, one might say. And as they say, to whom much is given, much is expected, right? So really, it has to do with, I'm interested in just discussing for a few minutes the accountability piece going forward. Because here the rationale is the following. Like the reason really why he's getting so much support, it goes something like, well, the West has abused African resources for the longest, right? Multinationals have exploited Africa for the longest, like Western multinational mining companies and so on. And those minerals resources have not really benefited Africans in general and Black people in general. And so now that you have somebody who is standing up against that, then he is worthy of all the support. And when you have the West via one of its general, Michael Langley, who comes and accuses him of bribery, of not utilizing the gold for the benefit of his own people, whereas most people think that no, he's actually using the gold for the benefit of his people because he's wanting to refine it locally. He's cutting the supply chain of some multinational. Well, that is causing all this support. People are saying, finally, we have somebody who's standing up for his people, and somebody who will ensure that the resources are well utilized for the well-being of the locals, of Black people in general. So that is really the underpinning of all these sentiments. Is like, yeah, finally have a strong leader who will stand up against the oppression of the West and who will ensure that there is an advancement, right? And there's finally the resources of the continent will benefit, Africans and then Black people in general. So that's the narrative, and it's a beautiful narrative. But there's a lot to be said in how that would be implemented in the long term, right? Because ultimately, I think our desires are clear. Is that we just want the global PAC, global Pan African community. We want the African continent to move from a state of survival to a state where people are thriving. We want a continent where basic necessities are available to all. We're talking about shelter, food. There is sound infrastructure for movement of people and goods and so on. Just like bare necessities. And then once that's established, yes, you will have people that will fall out of the mean, right? You have exceptional people as everywhere else who will go above the necessities and so on. But we at least want a continent where poverty is eradicated, because poverty is a manufactured thing. When you have when you have enough resources to make sure that nobody goes hungry, for example, but then you have people that are still going hungry and despite their effort are unable to overcome a certain set of poverty, then it really has to do with just an inefficient allocation of those resources, right? Because the pie is big enough. And so that is the longing, I think, of most people that are advocating for the kind of change that we're pushing even on this platform. And so those are the hopes that people like Ibrahim Traore are representing, because we're saying, yes, so if we can have leaders that will finally utilize the trillion and trillion and trillions of dollars of resources that this continent has for the benefit of its people, that is the kind of people we want to stand for. But again, I start by saying I want to talk about the accountability, because as they say, power is at the tip of the spear, right? I believe it might be a Chinese expression that says power is at the tip of the spear. And there is no greater power, as we can see across the world and across Africa. There's no greater power on the geopolitical stage as the power of weapons, the power of arms. It is not by accident that, for example, as you have all these coups d'etats across the African continent, that is the military often that's taking power. Because through military force, military lethal force, there's really nothing that can stand against that, or very few things that can stand against lethal military force, especially if you do not have institutions that are well ingrained, like culturally ingrained, to be able to offer a countermeasure. It is hard to resist the power of lethal military force if you don't have very strong checks and balances in place. I mean, look at it across the world. You might say a country like the United States, or people like to say some European countries. Well, I mean, it's really politicians that are, you have a system of democratic governance, but those are systems, right, that have been put in place maybe for hundreds and hundreds of years. But then look at how those same countries are imposing their will across the world. The US military is one of the most devastating, destructive forces in the world. I mean, the history is there to prove. How did Japan become subdued? You know, we have the nuclear bomb creating tremendous devastation. The US has over 700 military bases across the world, and just the sheer threat of that lethal military force is allowing the United States to have its way across the world. And so, I mean, look at what Israel is doing also. In Palestine, people are talking, people are wanting to revolt, but you have that lethal military force. Look at Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine is struggling to survive and overcome, but having a hard time resisting the Russian lethal military force. And so back on the African continent, back on Captain Ibrahim Traore, it's a lot of power that the military has across in Burkina Faso, across many African countries. And so it will be very important as we're observing this situation, as all of us are continuing to root, because we really want Traore to succeed. I really want him to succeed as that beacon, as that symbol of autodetermination, self-determination, as that beacon of courage, of being able to stand up against the powers that be and propose a different way of interacting, different paradigm in terms of negotiation. So we want him to succeed because he represents something that is very, very important for the future of Black people around the world. As he's doing that, nevertheless, it is important to figure out, how along the way, systems of checks and balances are also continuously developed. Because let me tell you something. I mean, Traore might have all the good desire in the world. Running a country is not an easy thing by any means, no matter what the size of that country is. Having a proper administration, systems that are working well, it is not the endeavor of one person, right? It's a very, very complicated thing. Ensuring that resources are allocated where they're supposed to be, having plans that are designed on the back of a vision. So it's a team from it. It's a national effort. So for somebody like Traore to succeed, there needs to be a system, a sound system in place, a sound system of governance in a way. Whereas, despite all the power that he might have, there's still a certain collegial way of implementing system that will lead towards the eventual development of the nation. National reforms also do take a long time, and it might take over a generation. And some of the fruits of that, we might not even be able to see it within this generation, but at least foundations have to be put in place. And so again, to somebody like Traore, who right now he's like a beacon, as I said, he's like the house on the hill, right? All eyes of the global PAC, the global Pan-African community are on him. It's a lot of pressure. But considering again that running a country can be very difficult, what we've seen many times is as people start getting a lot of power, absolute power corrupt absolutely. Because when it becomes complicated, they're not necessarily having their way. We've seen time after time after time through history, even through the African continent, where those leaders end up just falling on the wayside, end up engaging into nefarious ways. Because, yes, on one end, running a country is incredibly difficult. But on the flip side, being the head of a nation gives you access to very easy resources also, right? So it can be very easy to fall through the cracks and essentially deviate from the original intent because just the system isn't functioning, you're not having your way, and then you have access to fantastic benefits, whether it's financial or otherwise. And we've seen again many leaders that end up failing. They had the intent, but they end up failing because the system was just too strong and it's too hard to reform. I'm not saying that this is what will happen to Traore, because again, I have a lot of hope that he will succeed with his mission and that he will continue galvanizing the global P.A.C, galvanizing the support of Black people around the world. But we have to be cognizant of that. It is important to continue what I would call applying positive peer pressure, because that's one thing. Because when you have absolute power like that, like in the military, in a country where institutions are there, but when the military speaks, let's just face it, in many of those countries, the military will have its way. So in situations like that, it is important to continue applying positive peer pressure, because that's what all of us outside of Burkina Faso can do. By keeping our eyes on that one house on the hill, the beacon that represents Traore, keeping our light shine on it, it is a way for all of us to continue also applying pressure to ensure that pressure and support, actually positive support too, to ensure that he succeed, right? That his government succeeds. Now, this will not happen in a vacuum. This also entails what I talked about yesterday, the organizing piece. Because you will not apply pressure by simply coming on YouTube and making videos and things of that nature. No. Although public opinion matters, although, influencers with millions and millions and millions of followers can influence public opinion, but it goes beyond that. It goes to the point of organization. So it will be important for all of us to really organize in strategic and intelligent ways in terms of political action movements, in terms of support campaigns, people that are in the diaspora, with people from Burkina Faso and others. But there's going to need to be a certain organization that can end up influencing the state of affair. And we're not talking about infringing on somebody's sovereignty, because at the end of the day, despite all the Pan-African symbolic representation and aspiration, Traore still has a mission of ensuring that the well-being of his local people are met. That's his number one priority, and then the rest comes about. But him succeeding would have a massive influence on the global P.A.C in general, because especially right this moment, it is not by accident that if you go on the internet, some people are even calling him the de facto president of Africa, because he's raising up to such an unbelievable level of popularity. But yeah, so the accountability piece will be important, and my hope is that gradually, also, military regimes are good in environments where, as I said, maybe you did not have strong institution, and so if you have a military leader who fondly is a bit of a benevolent dictator, if you will, right? Who really has the well-being of his people and his nation at heart, well, can really come and utilize the power of that military to start affecting change in a direction that will lead towards the rising of his nation. But also remember, again, as I said, this is not a one person endeavor. I don't care how strong, smart you are. You will not run a country by yourself. It is just, there's too much at stake. Now, the hope is that somebody like Captain Traore, who was actually a very competent soldier, who has seen real combat multiple times, who has been affected in many places, so he understands what coordination is all about. He understands what putting a winning team is all about. He understands hierarchy and so on. So that knowledge should be helpful in terms of surrounding himself with a team that has a clear-cut a mission, right? So that will come from the vision that they have from Burkina Faso, then really having specific mission objectives, and then following those with undying devotion and determination. And him as the de facto leader, as the leader, then has a role of ensuring that the mission is on track. That's all you can do as really a leader of a nation. You're an inspiration, right? And you have to put the right team around you that will trickle down all the way to the situation on the ground. And you, as that inspirational force, is there. You hold your people accountable, but you hope that you have also good information coming all the way back up to you, and you make the proper decisions. Because ultimately, every ship has to have one captain, and Traore is the captain right now of Burkina Faso. So let's continue watching it. But again, I really want him to succeed. There's so much at stake. Just this morning, I was taking a piece on BBC Africa about a woman who was distraught because she was from Eritrea. Her 14-year-old child was being smuggled into Kenya from Eritrea on a smuggling boat, and the boat capsized and she died because they were trying to flee Eritrea because of the conflict. So there are some real situations in Africa. Those wars that are happening, I know we all want to advance a positive image of Africa, which, yes, there's some positive things, but let's not forget there are some real problems also. And obviously, conflict is not the exclusive domain of Africa. That you have to reject that all the time. The conflict in Russia, Ukraine, that's not Africa. Conflict Israel, Palestine, that's not Africa. As a matter of fact, Europeans, Americans have been way more violent in terms of wars than Africans. But that's not to say that we should reject that there are problems on the African continent. There are some real problems. Like, those conflict situations are real. People are dying. We still have a lot of young people trying to flee the continent through migration, for example, dying in the Mediterranean Sea and so on. So in light of all that's even more motivation why we want somebody like Traore to succeed. Because by people like Ibrahim Traore succeeding in implementing systems that allow the vast natural resources to actually benefit the continent, then we'll start having less and less of those tragedies. Then most young people will have hope. A lot more young people will have hope on a positive future on the continent. Will stop losing their lives trying to get away. The success stories that we have a lot of success stories across Africa, but they will even be amplified when people like Ibrahim Traore succeed. That is why we really want him to succeed, and but we need to continue applying that positive peer pressure, right? Positive peer pressure, and keeping an eye on everything that's unfolding. And then at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer, as I always say in this platform, a strong, developed Africa will benefit all Black people around the world. I have no doubt about that. A strong Africa, economically, financially, and politically, and will be a great beacon for the Caribbean, for African American communities, from people of Afro descent in Latin America. A fantastic beacon. So a developed Africa will be to the benefit of all Black people around the world, of the Global PAC, the Global Pan-African Community, which is the big Pan-African diaspora. Yeah, I'm going to end up here for today. It's already been 45 minutes. That's what I wanted to show to last. Thank you very much for your support. But as is our norm, I will end up with a quote here from Jasmin Crockett. Since we've been talking a lot about Jasmin Crockett, my quote today is from her. And so, let me see. Yeah, I believe you should be able to see the quote. Yeah, her quote say, "We must act to ensure that no matter where you live, everyone can share in the marvels of the modern economy." Folks, this is what we're all about on this platform. Ultimately, that's what we're really all about, is to make sure that nobody is left behind. And I mean nobody, not just Black people, but nobody. But the reality is that because of systems that have been implemented in this world hundreds of years, the reality is Black people are lagging behind in many metrics when it comes to wealth creation and so on. And so our fight is to ensure that those inequalities are eliminated so that we can really get to a more equal world. And when we get to that point, it'll be for the benefit of not only Black people, but the benefit of humanity. We'll have more optimized transaction, more optimized relationships across the world. And I believe we'll have a more thriving world. So that is the name of our fight. Until next time, peace be with you. Asante sana, which means thank you very much in Swahili. Please like, share, subscribe to the channel if you have not done that. That only takes you a second, but it helps us tremendously. So thanks again. And remember, we are a beautiful people. We are a capable people. We are a very strong people. Don't let anybody else convince you otherwise. Above all, we are the Global PAC. This was Tony Fumusimba Kwambamba Ngubu. Thank you very much and see you next time.